Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sawasawa Network's Leaders in Focus program, an initiative aiming to empower ordinary South Sudanese doing extraordinary things to build peace and community. My name is Samuel Gorang, and I'm your co-host for today's show.
Thank you so much. My name is Nyon Susie William. I'm your co-host today. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Jacob Alo, and I'm from South Sudan. I work for 3 different entities, and I'm happy to be in your studio today.
Thank you for hosting us today. My name is Alukudu William. I work for Community Empowerment for Progress Organization, a national civil society organization, but I also do other work for Empower Kids, a program that tries to educate our children in South Sudan. Thank you for having me.
Once again, thank you all for joining us. And today's show will focus on the analysis of the Revitalized Agreement on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan and the role of civil society in actually filling the vacuum and also bridging the gaps in promoting the peace that's going on. And so today we are being joined by 2 emerging young South Sudanese civil society leaders, as they have already introduced themselves. And so we are happy to have you here, and so to get into our program. Thank you.
Great. Now, I would like us to have some discussion in this. So, gentlemen, how revitalized are you? Since Garang said that we're going to talk about the Revitalized Peace Agreement, how revitalized are you, and what does peace mean to you? What are you doing for the South Sudan to have sustainable peace?
Thank you, Susie, for your question. The fact that we are in the era of the Revitalized Peace Agreement doesn't necessarily mean everyone is revitalized. We had never lost the hope to do peace work. Even when the war broke out, we were doing peace work. We love peace because we know that peace is critical for our survival. Peace is critical for our development. Peace is critical for our country. So from where I come from, we do a lot of peace building work in SEPO. SEPO is a national organization that operates in more than 8 locations in South Sudan. We engage with different stakeholders, church leaders, women groups, including even building military and civilians relations, because there was the element of trust building, which had eroded between the citizens and the military. So we are also engaging on that part, particularly in WOW and YEI, with the help of Citizen, to ensure that the relationship is cordial between the 2 groups. We do a lot of sessions for civil society organizations that are still growing up. South Sudan is blessed to have so many groups that are coming up to really work and advocate on issues of peace and how important peace is. And of course, you cannot just be focusing on peace and you forget livelihood, which is very critical, because you have over 1 million South Sudanese who are displaced, right? And these people, they need peace, but they also need something to be able to catch up with their lives. So we, through help of UN agencies, we are doing training like on tailoring, computer skills, income generating, like how to make beads and so forth, so that women group can sell these to be able to get money to sustain their livelihoods. So we are doing small things that we believe are very important for our country in the current situation, and we hope that these small things that we are doing with what another organization is doing, with what other groups are doing, will add up to really generating sustainable peace in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, for my case, I work for iRadio, like I said. We are the guys behind the scene. We do a lot of activities to make sure iRadio is running, provide news and credible information to the people of South Sudan. We cover the entire country with news and information. And we cover, I think, entirely since war broke out in 2013. iRadio it's been on air. And we move to Addis with all these politicians. We interview them. We make sure we feed civilian back home to know what is happening in Addis, in Khartoum, in Nairobi, wherever these high-level meetings are happening. We are always there. And we are there to make sure everyone is informed and everyone has a feeling and maybe put in some views whenever they get their politicians and their representatives. And that is what we do. We are always live in the National Legislative Assembly. That is what I do. We do as the organization. Like I said, we do other things also. I have this pollination project called Nonviolent Youth Initiative. That is what I do. I raise money to make sure I pay for school fees or for families who are unable to provide for themselves. That is what I do outside my work. And yeah, and I came to US here, and I'm happy to be with you to share all this. And thank you.
And so that's also a very good point of connection. You also founded an organization called Empower Kids, South Sudan. So can you talk a little bit about that and what you do and how that empowering kids can also help contribute to peace building or sustainable peace in general?
Thank you, Garang, for your question. Empower Kids was founded in 2014 with my colleague Hakim Monkwir and an American guy. And the reason why we founded the organization was basically to look at empowering the next generation of South Sudanese leaders who are yearning for education opportunities, basically. So what we try to do is that we recruit young South Sudanese, the best South Sudanese, the best 10, right? And get these best 10, put them in a project called Bridge to Rwanda program, which is a university gap education program that gives them time to be able to learn, improve their English skills, improve their other general skills, and then give them access to scholarships abroad. So since we started the program in 2014 to date, we have more than 15 South Sudanese who have successfully gotten scholarships in the US and in US universities abroad. And the project is moving very well. It's a Rwanda program, but then because of our connections with the ASU, Arizona State University, which has a lot of programs for South Sudan, they pushed us to be part of the project. Although we are trying to have more, we wanted really more South Sudanese, like 10 per year or so, but because of funding, they are able only to give us like 5 or 3 or 4 based on the best candidates we have. So like here in DC, we have somebody in George Washington University who we met with my friend Jacob, and she's extremely doing well. Others are across the country, all over United States. And so all we are trying to do is that to prepare the next generation of South Sudanese leaders who are educated, who are peaceful, but also focus on developing the country.
That's good. That's very good to hear. The two of you have talked about different activities you are doing to ensure that there's a sustainable peace in South Sudan and empowering young generation, like the side, work you are doing to raise funds to have support to children who are unable to pay for their school fee, and the same to what William just said about students in the United States. It's a very, very good, So yeah, as you are doing all these things, I am glad to hear that SEPO is also advancing the women economic empowerment, which is one of the biggest challenge women in our country have. And for sustainability or peace to come to South Sudan, we all need to be on the same page. So to get deep into the Revitalized Peace Agreement, you have seen how both parties, the key opposition leaders and like the opposition, the IO, and recently Dr. Lama Cole said he was not going to join the formation of the agreement we are all aware that since the agreement was signed in 2018, the government of the transitional government of national unity is supposed to be formed in May this year, which did not happen. And again, it was pushed to November, which is some few weeks away from now. And you can see the parties to the agreement are rifting off, the shoulders. The government is threatening to form the transitional government of national unity with or without the parties to the agreement. The parties to agreement are not. How do you see this confusion going on? What do you think the implication of this conversation around the key leaders going to affect the ARCs? And how are the citizens responding to this? Since you just came from home and you are here as citizens of South Sudan too, what is your reaction to this political conversation?
Maybe to pick it from here, I think we are all concerned. We always say, we are tired of war. South Sudanese citizens are really, really tired of war.
Sure.
And that is what everyone is saying on ground. So anything that will, prolong the war is not entertained in South Sudan. And I think South Sudanese are united that they need peace. They don't need war anymore. But yes, when they hear all these statements from the parties to the agreement, they get scared, especially when the voices of the leaders are different. They really think something bad will happen next. And this is where the civil society organizations in the country are already requesting the parties to the agreement to be very careful on what they say. Because like you said, peace was signed in September last year. It was supposed then was supposed to form a new government in May.
Yep.
But because of some incomplete tasks, it was extended again to November. Now that November is coming, those tasks are not even achieved. So that's why you hear all of them saying, okay, if this one is not achieved, like the oppositions are saying, if the security arrangement is not complete, is not implemented, then there will be no government of national unity in November. And government is saying also that we must form the government, because we cannot afford again to continue doing extension. This extension will come with a lot of crisis, and we don't want our people to do that. So when you really listen to them, you feel like all of them have points, but we would like them to come together. Let them come together and sit and agree on something.
Make a consensus.
Make a consensus, either to do extension with their own consents, that will be fine. If they form the government, let them also come and say, okay, we will form the government, then we will do the rest while going forward. Yeah. But yes, that's what is happening.
Yes, William, there is already a consensus within the government members that they are ready to form the government of national unity. And I think the oppositions have consensus among themselves too, that they are not going to be part of this government in November. How do you see, what implication do you see this into the agreement? How do you see it as a person and as a South Sudanese? Do you think this disagreement between the key principal parties have implication to the agreement itself?
Thank you, Susie, for your question once more. I think the situation is requires true leadership, because the numbers are out there. Over 1 million South Sudanese are displaced. Over 1 million South Sudanese are in refugee camps in the neighboring countries and all over the world. Now, levels of education are very low. Health of the South Sudanese is a problem. Clean water is a problem. Generally, development is stagnant. So when you are confronted with a situation like that, as leaders, you ought to really pull your socks and do something that is beneficial for your people and for your country. So in this sense, we have the agreement, which with the parties trying to form the government of national unity in November, which is a deadline. And by the way, when these extension was amended or approved, they had said there would be no more extension. So meaning, come November 12th, the government should be formed, right? And then you have also oppositions who are saying, But then there are also provisions that are in the agreement that should have been done before we form the government.
This
So
is a revitalized peace agreement. This is a 2015 agreement.
Correct.
It will revitalize. Do you think it will again be revitalized? Or what do you think will happen? Because we really need to get rid of this R-RR thing.
So, so why I said true leadership has to emerge in this situation, because you look at the cries of the people, as my colleague said, people really want peace. Really nothing much. For now, people want peace. And then after peace comes benefits. What is the dividends of this peace? Is it roads? Is it telecommunications? Is it clean water? Is it improvement in security? Will follow. So for us, we see that this kind of backtracking here and there and accusing each other cannot help. What is necessary is that as leaders, you need to get together and say, you know what, here is the issue we are confronted with. We are time barred. The agreement says this, and we've done A, B, C, D. Probably we have few things that we haven't completed. Can we, for the sake of our people in our country, agree on something? If you remember the CPA, there were provisions that even were not implemented in the pre-interim period that had to happen during the 6 years interim period. So can they also check their books and say, but we also had the same situation, right? And compromise, which is very critical. Because I believe without compromise, this R-RCSS would not have been signed. It was signed because of compromise, because they had put the people first. So this, to us, is critical, that they have to compromise, they have to put their people first, and they have to agree on those key areas that have not been accomplished to be able to be accomplished in the next few months ahead.
Yeah, and on this issue of compromise that you just talked about, which I think is very critical, and based on the discussion we've had, here so far, is that it looks like the country is really very divided. Not just the ordinary people, but especially the leadership. The government has its own program, has its own views on what to do. The oppositions have their own views on what to do, and it seems like they are two worlds apart, and it's very difficult for them to come together. And so in a situation like this, ideally, in my view, it's the role of the civil society to actually, fill in that, void and help bring them together, because they cannot do that on their own. So can you talk about some specific examples of what the civil society is actually doing to help, or has been doing so far to help bridge that gap, or would be doing to help bridge that gap, so that that compromise is reached? Thank
you for your question. I think you brought a very critical aspect. The civil society is very critical in this process, in ensuring that the gap between the warring parties is bridged. We are all aware that the civil society representatives are members of the mechanisms of the agreement, whether being in JEMEC, CITISAM, and other institutions, the Constitutional Amendment Committee and so forth. The civil society well represented. So apart from calling for parties to restrain from issuing public statements that undermine the peace agreement, that the civil society do, using press statements, going to the media houses to speak and talk. In these meetings, for example, in JEMEC monthly meetings or in CITISAM monthly meetings, is where the civil society also engage one-on-one with representatives from the parties, from the warring parties, to ensure that really messages for peace and for citizens' involvement and for implementation of the agreement is passed to the leadership. And civil society is also ensuring that they organize events that bring the leadership, the warring parties together to be able to discuss like trends on the peace agreement and what could be done to move the agreement forward. The church is a very important player, which I think we all know that the church in South Sudan is playing a very critical role in bridging these gaps. You might be aware last month the Sudan Council of Churches had a day with the RIAC and and president, and they had some good time to discuss, kind of to bridge the issue of the number of states, and particularly security arrangements. So even though the civil society cannot force the parties to do things, but they check, they alarm, they give an alarm that, you know what, A is not happening, B is happening, but it's not completed. Please, we urge you to do this and do that, and try to engage them, which the civil society has been calling for dialogue. So, and the other initiatives that are happening at the grassroots levels, like for example, what SEPO is doing with UNUMIS, the Grassroots Peace Forum, which is organized now in all the states. It has been done in Juba so far. Now this week we are doing it in WOW, to engage women, chiefs, local authority, youth, all the the inhabitants of a particular area, to be able to share in their views on how to move the process forward, because there is a view that grassroots were not represented during the negotiations. So how do we ensure that they become part and parcel of this process? So in a way, these forums are meant for them to be able to share their views, to give in, and contribute to ensuring that there is really a sustainable peace is achieved, and that the agreement is implemented in letter and spirit.
What do you think, Alua?
Yeah, I think civil society has a role to play in the Revitalized peace agreement, and I think they are doing it. We have youth group, we have the religious leaders, like he said, and we have women group. They are very active, and I think they are vital to this agreement. They are disseminating it, and they are persuading the leaders and the parties to the agreement to do everything possible to sustain peace again in South Sudan. So I would say they need to do more than what they are doing right now, because we are at a very critical point. You need to, especially bringing these leaders together is very important, and I think church has already taken a lead in this. They came to J1, and even the Pope meeting was also coordinated by the church. So they went, and they went with a big number of opposition groups, and they did that. So that is what we are expecting from the civil society organization, and we are expecting more from.
And you say the civil society should do more. Another question that I've been actually burning, that I feel, is that we're hearing like conflicting news that civil society itself is divided. Is that true, or you think like it's a very cohesive unit that when they come together they can impact change, or is it so divided that even themselves are also contributing to these dynamics and disagreements?
That is a good question. I think that is true, and this division started back in 2014 when the first peace negotiation started in Addis. Remember when we went toward 2013, and then in the early months of 2014, our leaders were called to go to Addis, and then when they went to Addis, there was this, there were no active civil society organization other than organization like SEPO and some women blocs. But that one brought in, and then some civil society organization went around and formed themselves and aligned themselves with the parties to the conflict. And I think that division alone is still there. So there are those who think they lean more on government, and others lean more on the opposition. And then when they speak, when they come together as civil society organization, they don't even agree on some issues. And I think that is very damaging to their own success. Civil society ideally should be the bridge between the people and the government and the rest, but they should not be seen like aligning themselves with opposition or the government. They should be speaking, and I think that division is still there. You have heard about many coalition, and then the alliance and all this, and it's still in that. They don't agree within the alliance or within the coalition. So I would say that division is there, but as I speak, there is still the main objectives is to make sure peace is restored in South Sudan. But as I would also advise them to iron out their differences, to speak on behalf of the people, and still act as the bridge between the government and the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, William, you talk about how you guys are engaging the local communities based on their locations? I'm not sure, are you engaging the displaced or you only engaging, of course, majority of South Sudanese are displaced. How connect or how engaging is the civil society, the refugees? Because South Sudanese refugees are the direct and most affected people by this conflict. Is there an engagement between the civil society, the government, you know, in regard to peace agreement? Are they informed about what is happening back home to give them hope? Maybe they will be going back home this year or this month, or are they just pushed there and that's it until peace come and they come back? Maybe is that how it's happening, or what is happening exactly?
Thank you, Susie. What is happening is that within the country, engagement is happening, where different organizations, including the mechanisms to the agreement, engage with the POCs to have the people who live in the POCs to be part of and parcel of the agreement, to be able to get their views. For example, last month we had 2 events with the mechanism on the security sector reform. So we brought guys from the POC in Juba to be able to gauge their views in regards to fit to the security sector reform. What would they want, you know, the security situation or the sector generally, which areas are critical for reform as far as they are concerned. And that has happened also in Bor, it happened in Bentiu, it happened in Wau, where there are protection of civilian sites. Of course, there are areas that are not easy to access due to insecurity challenges. So there are people who are displaced, but their views are not gotten because it's difficult to reach those areas, especially areas that are under armed oppositions which have not signed the agreement. So people who are in that area are in problem, so they can't access information, and people with information cannot reach them. Outside, as civil society organizations, we are not allowed to work in certain countries if we are not registered in that country. So what we do is we partner with other organizations. For example, in Uganda, we partner with the other organizations in Uganda, and there are South Sudanese organizations that are formed by refugees themselves.
Oh, wow.
So we collaborate with them to ensure that what we do here is also reflected the other side. On the same month, July, the same process of the security sector reform views consultations happened in one of the camps. They had to be brought from the different camps and put in one place. They spent like 3 days, interact with members of the committee, and they gave their views. And the team also went to Addis Ababa, to the other side of Gambela, to also get the same views. And probably they might have gone also to Kenya, Congo, I'm not too sure. So that is what, to the best of my knowledge, is happening in terms of engagement with the groups outside. And we work hand in hand with those organizations and partner organizations in those countries to ensure that our people get reached to with this information. So we hope that we will intensify that. Of course, funding is also another challenge that is facing us. So it is difficult to be able to cover all the countries in the region. Traveling in South Sudan is very expensive, flights and so forth. You need visas and so on. So, but we are trying through good ways to reach at least our people in the camps.
Thank you so much. Do you have any comment or suggestion, or what you will tell our viewers in regard to this conversation, especially in regard to the peace agreement? What do you think is your personal view?
Well, maybe before I go there, I will want to echo that the role of women in peace building and in the current peace implementation is very critical, because women are peace builders, right? If there is no peace in a woman's heart, I don't think there will even be peace in the house and in the community and in our country. So there is no way this agreement will be successfully implemented without having women actively playing their role.
Sure.
The agreement guarantees 35% representation for women at all levels, whether the national or state or the counties. And this is one thing that as civil society we've been trying to ensure that they have the information, the necessary information to implement these provisions, so that, for example, a level of government that does not implement these, what happens? Because we tell them, look, with the 25% which was granted to you, and you did not achieve it, maybe 10% or less. But now here, let's move further and say, if a level of government does not implement this provision, what happens to that level of government? So we're trying to work with the Women Caucus in the national and state parliaments to come up with a strategy of how to safeguard the implementation of the 35% all over the country, which is something that I feel is very important for us to highlight. In regards to what to tell our viewers is that all of us are critical in making South Sudan a peaceful country. And that cannot just be done by me or by my colleague Jacob or by international community or the parties alone. We have to work together. And the role of the diaspora is very critical, because we've all witnessed how important the diaspora has supported efforts of peace in the Sudan before the agreement, the CPA, and then after independence of South Sudan. They've been very critical. In other countries, a lot of money is coming from the diaspora to actually enrich the economy of a particular
Even South
country.
Sudan, you could say South Sudan is
Correct.
the diaspora is the one maintaining like the economy and the families.
Correct.
Right now.
Because they are families that for sure get, transfers, remittance from abroad almost every month to sustain their livelihoods. So it will be unfair to have left out the diaspora not to be part and parcel of the agreement. So as civil society, we want to ensure that, we want to appeal that let the diaspora be close, pay attention to what is happening in the country, but also be active citizens through engagements here with the embassy, through engagements with the other partner organizations in the country, which is, different groups, youth groups, women group, international conventions, conference, whatever that are happening. We should really be, exchanging ideas on how to better move our country forward. And of course, lastly, I would say that we should never lose hope, because we were born during the war, and we got our country, and here we are. So the situation that we had actually in the past was worse than where we are now. So I think what is happening, we will surmount it, and I'm sure we will walk as a free people to a very beautiful country that is peaceful, that is stable, and that respects rule of law, and our people will be able to enjoy the benefits of their independence. Thank you.
Yeah, on my view, I would like to tell the audience that this peace agreement is very important to all of us here in diaspora and also back home. And I also think this peace agreement will work. I think our leaders are disagreeing, and I think in the end they will go back to the table, and they will come up with a final solution to make sure we move forward as a country. We cannot afford again to have this agreement collapse, and that is a fear of the common people. But I think all of them, all the leaders are hopeful that this peace agreement will work, and I think it is in the best interest of each of them to move this country forward and make sure this agreement works. So I think they will find a way. This is not the first time to disagree. They disagreed last time, and they went to Addis, and they also made the extension. And I think this time they will also find some ways. And civil society is also watching and is advising. The women bloc, the youth, and the religious leaders, they are there watching. So I think we will find a positive feedback from our leaders soon. Secondly, we need not to lose hope at all. That is the only piece of land we have, and we just want to make sure it is peaceful. That is why we are here. And for the diaspora, they know they are here, they are in their new home, and we also need them. We need the support morally, we need the support financial, like what they are doing. You just make sure you look around. People are in dire needs, and for them to wait until this agreement is implemented, their survival lies in their hands. So I would like to encourage them to just look out and reach out there and make sure they continue doing the work they have been doing for the last 20-something years. Since they came, they never let people down, so they are doing a good job. And even the engagement with foreign governments also, whether here in the US or in Europe or in Australia, I think they are there. They are community ambassadors. They have been doing this, and they are doing that voluntarily for years. And I think we will be fine soon. These are the challenges of a new nation. I think most of the countries we are in today went through the same process, and I think we always reflect on their history and compare it with our history. There's nothing we can say. Even if this agreement doesn't work, which I hope not, we will still find a way to fix our country. That is the only piece of land we have in the whole world. So
that's a really powerful way to put it. So
Yeah.
I will take that seriously. That hope is indeed the only piece of land that we have, and that's very true. South Sudan, it is still in my heart, it's still my land, and it's also equally important to everybody else. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, William Lukudu. Thank you, Jacob Aluong,
Welcome.
for joining us and really having a very, very enlightening conversation today. And thank you also, my co-host,
Thank you
Susie
so
William.
much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, our viewers and our audience. Thank you for being with us. Sawa Network encourage civil and active discussion to encourage sustainable peace in South Sudan. This is the only platform where civil society, civilian voice is heard. Please follow us on our YouTube, our Facebook page. See you next time. Thank you for staying with us. Bye-bye.